depending what side of me you're looking at, you'll be either talking to the superficial front line or the superficial back line. To start us off, we are going to talk about the superficial back line. The superficial back line connects and protects the entire back side of the body. It starts from the bottom of the foot to the top of the head. It goes into two pieces, from the toes to the knees, from the knees to the brow. The main postural function of the superficial back line is to support the whole body in an upright extension. So this will prevent your body from curling over into flexion. Because of this, we need to use more of the slow twitch fibers in our body. The movement function of the superficial back line is to create extension and hyperextension. If I were to pick up a volleyball, I would bend down, and on the up phase, I'd be using my superficial back line. So, for the superficial front line, it connects the entire frontal surface of the body, from the top of the toes to the side of the skull, in two pieces, from the toes to the pelvis, from the pelvis to the head. The main postural function of the superficial front line is to balance the superficial back line. The overall movement function of the superficial back line is to create flexion of the trunk and hips, and extension at the knees and dorsiflexion of the foot. One movement that you can do to use the superficial front line would be a crunch. You're coming up, you're using your superficial front line. There's a couple of unique things about the front and the back lines. For the front line, you are using mainly for movement, which uses more of your fast twitch fibers. For the back side, you are using the back mainly to help you with your posture, which has you using more of your slow twitch fibers. Alright, so now we're going to talk about the lateral line, which brackets each side of the body from the medial and lateral midpoint of the foot around to the outside of the ankle and up the lateral aspect of the leg and thigh, passing along the trunk in a basket weave under the shoulder to the skull in the region of the ear. The postural function is to balance the front and back and to balance from left to right, so you're not flopping around everywhere. The movement function is to bend the body in lateral flexion of the trunk, abduction of the hip, and eversion of the foot. An example of a movement for the lateral line would be a cartwheel. Yay. Last but not least, we have the spiral line. The spiral line loops around the body in a double helix, joining each side of the skull across the upper back to the opposite shoulder, and then around the ribs to cross in the front at the level of the navel to the same hip. From the hip, the spiral line passes through like a jump rope, along the thigh and shin to the medial longitudinal arch, passing under the foot and running up the back and outside of the leg to the ischium and into the erector myofascia and end very close to where it started on the skull. The postural function is to wrap the body in a spiral to help maintain balance across all three planes. For the movement function for the spiral line, it is there to create spirals and rotations in the body and in eccentric and isometric contraction to steady the trunk and leg to keep it from folding into rotational collapse. So an example of using your spiral line is hitting a baseball. When you're swinging, you're going into rotation, and the spiral line stops you from going all the way around and collapsing.